Hey there guys, we're taking a look at Burnout Paradise Remastered running on the AMD Ryzen 5 5500U. Now the game is currently running at 1080p with the medium in-game graphics settings, and we are at the stock 15 watt TDP. Now the game is currently running at the medium settings, and of course we are getting some very solid performance here, especially since we are at the stock 15 watt TDP. Now the game has a 60 FPS cap, so we can't really go past that, but our 1% lows here are what are actually holding us back here, where there are quite a few fluctuations, especially once we start to pick up some high speed. But overall the experience is very solid, and if you didn't have an FPS counter you really would not notice any major drops or anything like that. So the overall experience is just really solid, and I actually found it to be very enjoyable. And since it ran this well at the stock TDP, I decided, well, alright, I'll turn up the graphics settings all the way up to the high preset. And after doing that, there was definitely a noticeable hit to the performance. We were now not hitting the 60 FPS cap, and instead we're just a few FPS below that, and our 1% lows were now pretty much in the low 40s. But overall the game looked really nice and performed still really decently well, especially considering how low our TDP is right now. And I figured this would be a good baseline from where we could start turning up the TDP to see if we could actually improve the overall performance. And so that's when I decided to just use the balance preset to turn up the TDP to 25 watts to see what kind of gain we could see there. And at the 25 watt TDP, we do see some uplift in our 1% lows and our averages, where our averages are really just a little shy under 60, and our 1% lows are now pretty much a little under the mid 40s, but it's not a substantial uplift, though you will notice that overall the frame time charts are just more consistent. There's less spikes, so overall the experience does feel noticeably smoother. And really it's why the frame time charts are very important to pay attention to, not just the 1% lows. Both are very important to essentially demonstrating to you guys how well something is performing. The fact that you see very little spikes in those frame times pretty much lets you know that this is going to be an extremely smooth experience. Of course, we could try to squeeze out a bit more performance by going with the 30 watt TDP instead of 25 watts. So if we set the AMD APU tuning utility to the performance preset, we can see what that does to the performance. And as you can see here, what we're seeing now is averages that are pretty much at 60 FPS with 1% lows that are just a frame under 50. So really this is going to be a very smooth experience, and you can see by the frame time charts that even those small little spikes that we were having before are effectively gone, and really it is a extremely smooth experience. But just look at those temperatures. The temperatures really are the biggest winners in all of this because it has seen the largest gain, and I really don't think that this extra level of performance is worth the increase in temperatures, at least over the 25 watt TDP. This is going to be a noticeable upgrade over the stock TDP, but again, you will gain most of that performance benefit by just going with 25 watts. And if you're on a really limited system, I would try to at least go to 20 watts, but if you can't even do that, the game is still perfectly playable at stock, so I would not worry about that too much. But of course, we can also try just setting this to the medium preset to try to maximize our performance, because if we can get those 1% lows to be at 60, then that is going to be essentially the smoothest possible experience, because the game will never dip below its max FPS. So let's take a look at what medium is like. Now, dropping down to the medium preset with the 30 watt TDP really does not see a huge uplift in those 1% lows, though they are really close to the 60 FPS cap of the game. So this is essentially the smoothest possible gameplay that we've seen so far, but it isn't completely free of any issues. So honestly, I'd just take the visuals of high over getting the small little boost in the 1% lows here. If you don't have an FPS counter up, you will not be able to tell the difference anyway, so I really don't think it matters too much. With that said, I am very disappointed to see that it is limited by that FPS cap, and there is no way of unlocking it. There's no files that you can try to change or anything like that. I know that there is a way of unlocking it by just like using like a memory hack, but what ends up happening is you break the physics, because a lot of the physics is tied to the FPS. So in that scenario, we pretty much end up in a situation where unlocking the FPS is impossible, and that is really disappointing to see, but it does also make the game perform really well on these low performance APUs. I mean, this is pretty fantastic, and you are technically playing this better than a lot of people that grew up playing this game when it was originally released on consoles and even on PC, honestly, because you are running the game at the highest settings at 1080p. So overall, I would really recommend checking this game out. It is pretty much one of my favorite racing games of all time, and it's still one of the best feeling games when it comes to just driving around in super high speeds. It's so enjoyable. It's one of my favorites, so really just check it out, and I will see you guys next time.